Hey everybody, we are live talking with the genius of play on, hang on, let me get my technical difficulties set up here. We are going live today. I'm working with Genius of Play to share different ways that kids can help expand their gross motor skills, specifically preschoolers. So we are going to try to get everything rolling here and spend a couple minutes waiting for people to kind of hop on here. So my name is Keri Wilmot. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, and I've had about 18 years of experience working with kids to develop their motor skills, their gross motor skills, fine motor skills, self-care skills. And today I'm working with Genius of Play, and we are sharing tips and tricks of how preschoolers can improve some of their other academic skills through gross motor skills. So I'm an expert for Genius of Play, and I support the mission to make sure that every child gets to play every day by supplying them with tips and play ideas. So the Genius of Play wants everyone to know that it's more than play. Different types of play will help kids develop different types of skills. And the Genius of Play website is full of resources about the developmental benefits of play. And today I'm going to discuss with you all one of the expert articles that I wrote and on thegeniusofplay.org. So let's talk about how your kids can get the most out of playtime and build their gross motor skills. So what are gross motor skills? Does anybody, gross motor skills are how kids use all of their muscles. They use their arms and their legs for things like climbing, running, jumping, leaping, skipping, galloping, and they are using those activities usually in the yard, around the playground. And, preschoolers are kids that are usually in that 3 to 5 year old age range. So those are the kids that are getting ready to go off to their first school experience. They are, going to be learning in preschool about colors and shapes and letters and numbers. And it's not always easy to kind of figure out why would gross motor skills, how can they, really benefit a child who is really going to be learning about shapes and colors and letters and numbers. So gross motor skills, like I said, are kids in the preschool age. They're running, they're jumping, skipping, leaping, and galloping. And as they're developing all those muscles, that's how we can kind of attribute some of the other skills that kids are learning, especially when they're in school. So if we want kids to be able to sit upright at the table, then they need to have good core muscle strength. So that means that the muscles in the front of their body, their abdominal muscles and their back muscles are strong. Because if they're not, then they might be slumping forward on the table. So through all of those activities, like the running and jumping and climbing, that is how they develop these core muscle skills that can actually help improve their sitting posture when they get to preschool. Another reason why gross motor skills are really important is that when kids are let's say they're at the playground and they're hanging from the monkey bars or they're climbing up the cargo nets and they're using their hands to climb up and down, they're actually, through that gross motor play, building all of the fine motor skills that are inside their hands just by holding on. And you think, okay, well, that's great. We want their hands to be strong. So why is it important for preschool? Well, in preschool, kids are learning how to hold their pencil. They're learning how to cut with scissors. They need to have good strength in their hands to do all of those academic things that they do in preschool, like color in the lines, cut out different shapes, so that when they head off to kindergarten, they know how to hold their pencil the right way, and eventually they're able to do things like start to form letters in their name, and eventually start to write their first and last name. And there's another reason why gross motor skills are important for preschoolers, and a lot of it is that, we know that it's important for kids to spend some time, disconnected from tech. We want them to play outside, be on the playground, and what we've kind of figured out over time is that as kids expend their energy and they're running around in the yard, they're doing some playing, it actually has some positive benefits for their attention span. So a lot of times with older kids, I'll say to, their parents, if if they come home from school and they have a hard time with wanting to sit and do homework right away, why don't you let them run out in the backyard for a little bit, then bring them inside and have them sit down and do their work. So I guess the idea is that there are just really so many other activities that kids can benefit from just by playing outside and having experiences that are just, part of their traditional childhood. So I saw a couple of questions roll through. Sorry for my finger there. And one of them is, what kinds of activities should we encourage to do on the playground? And a lot of times I'll suggest to parents, free play is great. But the more muscles and joints that kids can use over time is better. So you want to see them using the cargo nets, climb up the cargo net, use your hands to pull yourself up, balance on with your feet, climb up to the platform, head down the slide. Look for things like zip lines and monkey bars, and when they're going down like that fire, the fire pole, are they wrapping their legs around the bottom, holding on with their arms? You really want to see them use as many of their muscles and joints as they can at the same time. So another little tip for the playground, which is kind of fun too, is that if some kids have a hard time kind of engaging in something and sticking with it. So developing an obstacle course at the playground is something fun to do too. So first, can you climb across the monkey bars, run across the suspension bridge, and then slide down the slide? And how many times can we do that before we hit 10 or 15 minutes? So the idea is that we also, not only do we want kids to have practice with these experiences, that we want them to be able to sustain them and do them for a long period of time. That's what builds their muscle strength and their endurance. And I saw another question kind of come in. Are there any specific toys and games that you would recommend for kids to improve their gross motor skills? And I think that's, there is no one specific toy or game. I think you can make any different you can improve gross motor skills through lots of different ways. And it doesn't have to be the one specific item that you bought that's going to make or break it. It's really how you play with it. So like, let's say you have bubbles in your garage or in your backyard. Instead of, to really have kids use their gross motor skills, don't just have them pop them with their finger. Have them, chase after them like they're a dog, or a bear crawling on their hands and feet. Or are they going to roar and claw at them like they're a dinosaur? Sports equipment is great. Soccer balls, regular playground size balls, little basketball hoops, anything that basically just kind of gets kids remaining active. A lot of families have, with supervision, if you make just a trip to playground or some playground equipment in the backyard, or a little teeny tiny mini trampoline that they use with your so that they can, with your supervision, so that they can use their balance. Let's see, other games you can play. Anything in the backyard, hide and seek, follow me, Simon Says. Those are all just kind of typical activities that kids use, that don't even really need any different equipment. It's just something that they can kind of do for fun. So, all right, let's see here if anybody else has any other questions, or let's see what else we have here. Give us some hearts. Let us know you're here. Where are you from? How old are your kids? What are some of the activities that you guys like to do in your yard or in your neighborhood that help? I did see another question that somebody's interested to know about the rules of rules-based play versus free play, and what are the differences in skills learned. I think that you need a good mix of that. Certainly a lot of kids, I kind of mentioned it before, some kids just, their learning style is that they need some direction. They want to be able to do things, but they just need a little bit of guidance. You certainly want to promote free play, but there are just some kids who need it. So, or maybe they just need it when you get there, just something to get them going. So maybe as you head to the playground, you think, oh, we'll do an obstacle course when we first get there. And then maybe we'll, as they kind of get into it, they transition into playing, you kind of back off and let them experience the different activities that they want on their own. So I think I like to see a happy medium of it, so that people are kind of getting, a little bit of both, so that, it's kind of working in both ways. I have another question that I saw. Any ideas for how grandparents can create gross motor skill games that we can play remotely with grandkids who don't live near us? I FaceTime with my granddaughter weekly, and I'm always looking for some way to play with her even though I'm not nearby. That is a great question. If you have technology, I think that, if you're FaceTiming, a lot of kids like to do exercises. That's a great way to play kind of Simon Says, or a lot of kids like to pretend to be animals. I use that a lot in my occupational therapy practice to help kind of improve their strength. I'll say, let's pretend to be a butterfly. Let's pretend to crawl like a bear. Why don't we do some yoga poses? Maybe we can try to push the wall over. There's all sorts of imaginative ways that kids can kind of spark their gross motor skills where, you still can be a little bit far away. And I'm, it's kind of a double-edged sword. We're talking about gross motor skills, but I am really thankful to technology to be able to kind of bring these experiences to you, and for, grandparents and kids to be able to kind of share in those experiences, even when they're not in the same place. So let's see if we have any more different questions that are coming in. Okay, Stephanie asks, as teachers or people that work with kids, what can we tell parents to do at home? That's another great question. I think, it's really just scheduling time. I can tell I have the same issue as a parent myself. It's easy to kind of get lost in the day-to-day routine and to go from one activity to another, and to head home from work and really have a hard time kind of, getting it into the day. The best thing that you can do is just really try to schedule it in there and make sure that you spend time, finding, it doesn't have to be hours. It can be 5 minutes that people are, just spending time and really, just participating. Don't get overwhelmed with feeling like you have to do it every day. Set aside 3 times per week and use your imagination. Again, find things that you already have. Do you have bubbles? Do they have ride-on toys? Or do they have scooters? Do they have bikes? Is there a ball game that they can play? Kick the soccer ball in the backyard. Or, even if it's not necessarily spending time to do outdoor play if the weather's not great, have the kids help with activities inside the house. Give them a broom and let them sweep. See if they can use all their muscles to cart the groceries inside from the car. Those are just some kind of everyday life activities where kids are using those same experiences and still building their gross motor skills. Okay, Tanya, who is the winner when we play games? Do I believe in competition, or should everyone be a winner, or is this age related? I think at the preschool age, it's really hard because the winning and losing thing is really tough. And a lot of kids struggle with that. It can take something that is a good intention of fun and really sometimes end it as being, somebody's crying, somebody's hurt, somebody's upset. I think the more kinds of cooperative games that you can find where, everybody's just, do you have a parachute? Everybody's, holding the little parachute with balls on top. Everybody's kind of enjoying in the same activity together without keeping score or keeping track of who won. And that's the hard part, because as adults, we can say, we're not going to keep track. There's no winner. There's no loser. And then the kids, ironically, have this way of sort of keeping track anyway. And I think that's the hard part. We have all these, great intentions, and they keep us on track, because if you have a child who has a competitive spirit like my son does, I will tell you that winning is everything to him. And so, again, I think you do what you can, but really kind of look for some of those cooperative games where everybody can just have fun. If you're playing, we live in the South, so we play cornhole a lot. It's not about who gets them in. It's just about cheering somebody on and giving them some praise when they have success versus, kind of keeping track. And another, suggestion for that is to sometimes just kind of distract them. Is there, who's winning? Oh, I don't know. Let's just go back. Here, it's your turn. Why don't you try this pink one? Just kind of distracting them away from that concept sometimes helps sort of redirect it. Sidra is asking, how about activities for kids that are kindergarten age? It's really the same kinds of activities. I think the difference that I see with preschoolers and kindergartners is really sometimes just the skill level. Again, the older kids, even with that competitive spirit, they really want to jump in and make sure that they will sometimes, again, shape it to be a little bit more competitive because they have more skills. But it really is just anything that your family likes to do. I mean, using as many of those muscle groups as possible. But the outdoor play is really great. Actually, even if you can't even get outdoor play in, a lot of times there's a lot of great videos on YouTube. There's, kids exercise videos, even the Wiggles, any kind of, group that basically is running and jumping and singing and dancing. Those are some of the things that preschoolers and some kindergarten age kids are doing. Their choice of music may not be the Wiggles. They might want something like Kids Bop or something that's a little bit more friendly in terms of their music interest. But, certainly dance parties, all those things are really, some other ways that you can get older kids involved too. Okay, Lauren is asking, hi, Keri. Hi, Lauren. Can you tell if your child is learning and mastering age-appropriate gross motor skills? We as occupational therapists and even physical therapists who are looking at gross motor skills, we have assessment tools and standardized checklists and things that we look for if kids are coming to us if for therapy, if people suspect that they might have something more going on. As a parent, a way to kind of keep track of that is just head to Google and search gross motor skills for a 4-year-old and kind of see what pops up. And there's a lot of checklists that are out there that will basically let you know, a 4-year-old should be able to, at that point, kick a ball, walk up and down the stairs, alternating feet. They're starting to, they're climbing. They're starting to do maybe some higher level things like standing on one foot. So I guess usually parents often know if their kids are pretty agile or not. As kids get older, it's the same kinds of skills, but again, we're looking for things like more balance, more accuracy, quality of how kids are moving. And if you have a question, like I said, just head to Google, pop in your child's age, and there usually are lots of checklists and lots of lists of things that you can reference that will help kind of give you a gauge and keep on track of activities to promote or activities that you can add into their life that might include some of those activities that are on the developmental checklists. Okay, Paige is asking, what can I do about my son's weak pencil grasp, specific play activities? So again, we're talking about gross motor skills mainly, and that's kind of the purpose of why we're here today. A lot of times when as an occupational therapist, when I look at a child's fine motor skills, I can trace it back to the fact that maybe their gross motor skills are not as strong as they should be. I'll start to ask parents questions like, did they crawl on their hands and knees for a long period of time? Are they able to climb when they go to the playground? And if their hand skills are weak and their fine motor grasp is not developing, then sometimes we go back to the gross motor activities to really make sure that we've built up a solid foundation for their hand strength. So we'll do, like I had mentioned before, I use a lot of yoga, pretending to be animals. So, holding that downward dog yoga pose for 10 or 15 seconds. Are they able to hold a plank pose? Stand up and try to push the wall over. Do a standing up, instead of a full push-up, it's hard for little kids. Stand at the wall, put 2 hands on the wall, push back and forth. Those are the kinds of gross motor activities that kids can use to help improve their fine motor skills. The other thing, is that for fine motor skills, and just another tip, I always tell parents to raid the kitchen drawer. Look in there for things like tweezers and salad tongs and strawberry hullers and all sorts of little gadgets, meatballers, things that allow them to use their hands, and then pair those up with some of the games that you have in your house. So maybe you're playing hi-ho cherry-o and you want to improve his grip strength. Well, you can use your fingers, or maybe use the tweezers to pull the cherries out of the bin while you're kind of sorting them through the game. So there's other ways to kind of build fine motor skills. Again, it's not about a specific game, nothing is really magic, but it's how we're using, different strategies to use those games and help improve a child's pencil grip. So people who are still watching, let's see, give us some likes, hearts, questions, anything else that you are thinking about, that you want to know about. Do you have any questions about gross motor skills? I hope that you are subscribed to Genius of Play on Facebook, so make sure you like their page. I'm Toy Queen. I'm Keri Wilmot, but my Facebook page is Toy Queen. So we would both love to have as many people liking and subscribing to our content, so you can find out about more events like this and learn more tips. The Genius of Play, check out thegeniusofplay.org. So that's the website for the Genius of Play. There are so many great tips from other experts like myself that have information about developmental benefits of play, hundreds of free play ideas that are fun for kids and the entire family, so that you have, maybe there's other questions you might have about not just motor skills, language or social skills. I was kind of throwing some ideas out there about activities, but there are on the website specific activities of things that you can do with your kids at home and different games that you can play. So I'm not seeing any other questions. So I think we're going to wrap it up for now. I hope that everybody has, we got one. So we won't go just yet. My kindergartner likes to play tag, but he's a very klutzy runner. Any ideas on things to help him become a better runner aside from keep running? I think sometimes for kids with running, it's about body awareness and controlling their body as they're moving through space. So if it's a body awareness activity, again, the yoga will help. It helps improve muscle awareness to their joints, gives them a better sense of kind of where they are in the world and how their body parts move through space. I also recommend doing a lot of carrying, like lifting, and that's where I had mentioned before, bring in the groceries, use those muscles and joints so that you're giving kids a better awareness, and then that should overall help their body awareness, which sometimes eventually kind of trickles down into the quality of how they're running or how they're participating in gross motor skills and their overall coordination. All right. Let's see, anybody else have any other questions, comments, things they want to share, activities they like to do at home? Okay. All right. So again, this is Keri Wilmot, and thank you for joining us. Feel free again to check out the Genius. I thought we were done. They keep coming in. So I'm so glad, actually. I don't really want to end this chat. So I just saw one more roll through. Bear with me. Okay, Heather asks, my kids grab fly swatters and try to burst bubbles with the fly swatters and then have sword fights when the bubble solution runs out. I love that idea. That is I never would have ever thought of that, but that is awesome. That's a great idea. Thanks for sharing that, Heather. And Tanya says, I like to use spatial directions for coordination skills. Right. Actually, that's another thing that does actually make gross motor skills. That's a great suggestion, a little bit harder. So it's not just about like running and jumping and kind of aimlessly doing that. It's involving things like right and left and up and down and beside you, behind you. So like if you are playing a game in the backyard, maybe you're playing hide and seek, or you hide a tennis ball in the backyard and somebody has to find it, but they're not just finding it, they're finding it based on the directions and the clues that you're giving them. That's another great way to make your gross motor skills another way to kind of help improve their coordination by letting kids know those spatial details. So kids don't often, they have to learn the top of their head, the bottom of their feet, their left hand, their right hand, their right shoulder, left elbow, so those kinds of spatial directions, and knowing that those clues helps as educators when we're trying to say and help improve their coordination. Okay, so when you skip, you need to lift your right knee up and hop. So giving them those same kinds of giving them the clues behind knowing how to move their body parts, and then using those clues that they've learned to teach them new skills. Okay. All right, so I think that's all for now. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh wait, how many times am I going to end this chat before we get another question? Okay, so we got another one here. My son is 6. He's still using both hands to write and eat. I'm not sure if he's left or right-handed. Is there anything that I should do about that? So it's usually, hand dominance is tricky. And usually some kids, we find out pretty early on, usually as they're hitting that preschool age, we know kind of what their hand preference is. And eventually that preference is something that kind of transitions into a dominance. So they might start, you might just see them using things more with their right hand. I think it's hard if you maybe are a lefty, or it's hard if you're a lefty and your child is a righty, but it can be hard right away to sort of figure out what that preference is. So one of the tricks that I often give to my clients is when you give the child something to write with or eat with, don't put it in their hand or put it on the same part of their, like let's say your child eats dinner in the same spot at the table. That spot happens to be when you're bringing food to the table, you're always bringing food to their right side. So therefore, a lot of times kids will reach with the hand that's the closest to what they're trying to get versus kind of if they're left-handed, they may not reach across their body to get it. It's closer to the right hand, so they'll use that. So one thing you can do is put something in the middle of their body. So if you're giving them a fork or you're giving them food, if they're sitting at the table, put it right smack in the middle of their body and see if which hand they kind of initiate wanting to use on their own. That's a way to kind of clue in and see, well, 9 times out of 10, did they use their right hand, or was it 50-50? That will kind of give you an idea of naturally, how kids are kind of reaching for that and what their hand dominance might be. Usually by 6, and that's the tricky part, because a lot of kids, when they hit kindergarten, and we're putting pencils and markers and stuff in children's hands earlier and earlier to write letters, and it can be stressful for a lot of kids and a lot of parents if they haven't quite developed that hand dominance yet, and now they're sort of focused to have to choose one because they're doing something all day long that requires them to, have that preference. But hopefully that will give you some ideas. Becky is asking, are there play ideas for gross motor movement for a 12-month-old who is sitting up but not moving freely on their own? Yeah, some of the things that I like to do with younger kids is, you can, when you go to the park, have, you sit on the swing and put the baby on your lap. Or, if you have a little mini trampoline, one of those little tiny ones, not the huge outdoor ones, one of the little tiny baby ones, and you have the baby sit on the little mini trampoline, and then you kind of bounce them up and down. That's another way for them to get movement and gross motor skills. Yoga balls, therapy balls, but we call them therapy balls. They're really yoga balls. You can now thankfully get them in pretty much any department store, or even just a larger size playground ball. You can hold the baby on top of the ball, hold them really tight, kind of move them back and forth, side to side, put them on their belly, roll them back and forth. Those are some strategies of things that you can try that can kind of help promote movement and build strength and coordination if kids are not yet walking yet or crawling yet. When they do start to crawl or commando crawl, it comes before hands and knee crawling. That's more like that army crawl on their belly. Finding different fun things for kids to reach out for and chase can really kind of help their movement patterns. But I hope that gives you some ideas, Becky. Another person is asking, my son walks on his tiptoes and I'm having trouble getting him to use his whole foot when walking and running. He also never crawled. I try reminding him, but for now, tiptoes comes naturally to him and I'm having trouble breaking him of that habit. A lot of kids do tend to shift their weight forward and kind of walk on their toes. And it's hard for them. It does become a habit, and it makes it challenging for them to kind of transition out of that. Sometimes I've seen a lot of kids, like we talked about different animals, being different animals, maybe pretending to walk like a penguin where he puts his heel down and tries to walk on his heels instead of his toes. Sometimes like being on uneven surfaces can help. Like for example, if you like to be up on your tiptoes and you're on the suspension bridge at the playground, then it's hard to be up on your tiptoes because you're going to lose your balance. So finding some safe ways to work on balance, like, if you're at the playground walking up a hill, that tends to shift kids' balance back, so that it's pretty much, I'm sure there are some kids who can do it, but it's not easy to try to walk up a hill on your tiptoes. You really do have to shift your weight back, and then onto your heels in order to be able to get up safely and keep your balance. So that might be something. Uneven ground. I'm not sure if you live near the beach or there's a place where there's sand, but those uneven surfaces, something other than grass, that again is another way that kind of helps kids shift their balance a little bit, and it's not as easy to stay on tiptoes when you're in those positions. So, okay. See if anybody else have any other questions, comments, anything they want to share. Okay, I think this might be it. We keep going back and forth with adding different things, but I think that's it. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us. I hope that you've learned some great tips and tricks. And again, make sure you head over to the geniusofplay.org website. Look for more tips and tricks there from all sorts of different experts on all sorts of developmental skills that are all play-based and a lot of fun. And again, make sure you like Toy Queen on Facebook. Make sure you like Genius of Play on Facebook. And stay tuned for other chats and articles and all sorts of great fun stuff to help your child's development. Have a great day.